You have appeared, I believe.
Yeah, it took long enough. How are you this morning, Bill?
Good, I'm good. I'm making these ear saver things. And if you looked at that video I did about digital construction, one of the MIT students is working for them now, is doing development and interesting projects, and he contacted me. So we're doing some stuff together, trying some plastics they make. They make all kinds of stuff. It's pretty amazing. So they're sending me sample rolls of plastic, and I'm cutting them as hard as I can. And I'm getting some from my buddy Howard over in Norva Plastics. He's been sending me some sheet polystyrene. So I got 10 sheets yesterday, so that'll keep me going for a little bit.
Cool.
And so just.
And you said it's about an hour per sheet.
It's a.
I mean, three hours per sheet.
Yeah, about 2.5 hours to get 500 of them.
And you're cutting that with a little 16-inch bit or an 1/8-inch bit.
16th-inch down spiral, using vacuum and a pressure foot to hold them in place. It really takes all three. I could probably cut faster,
right?
But I think I'd start losing them a little bit. So it's
yeah.
This has sort of been the sweet spot. It's like an hour and 10 minutes to cut a 2-foot by 8-foot sheet. So you know, the original stuff I got was in 2-foot wide rolls, but now I'm getting 4-foot wide. So all my stats so far are in 2-foot wide chunks. But you know, just cut them, and you know, it makes minimal mess. I mean, a 16th-inch down spiral bit doesn't generate much dust in a 0.02 thick 0.02 inch thick material. There's just not much stuff being removed. But it's been it's, you know, I like just cutting, just sort of grunting along, and I've got tons to do other than that. And so I can just turn the machine on, and it's kind of noisy. The vacuum runs. The cutting's quiet, but the vacuum's loud.
Right.
But it does, like, it's the combination of down spiral, pressure foot, and vacuum works really well. Gives a really, really nice clean edge.
Cool. So
I got a pile of them going to a medical group in Brooklyn today, and 500 of them going tomorrow to, or later today or tomorrow to Boston. So it's been interesting. So let's get down to business. You're talking about this, this table. Last time we talked, you were talking about this big table you were working on, and how you had been cutting it and trying to get it from, keep it from sagging and without looking too clunky. So you sent me some pictures. Now, do you mind going through these things? If I got enough technology to pop them up here and talk about the process, because it's a pretty interesting, you know, it's longer. The table's longer than your ShopBot is. So it requires a little bit of cogitation on that. And let me see if I'm smart enough to make this screen share thing work. Let's see, maybe. Ha! Can you see that?
I can see that.
All right.
You did it, Bill. Well, so what we were talking about last time is that over the length of that table, and even in this photograph, it looks as though there's a sag, and that's lens distortion from a phone from a camera phone. I put a straight edge on it, and it is dead flat. It's totally straight. But that's an 11-foot span between those two legs. And the trick was to come up with a system that is reasonably discrete between the two leg assemblies, that adds a lot of rigidity to that subtop and the top. And so what I did was I created 2 long beams in between. They're laminated Brazilian cherry beams that are inlaid into pockets on the underside of the top of that table. So, and then that is further supported by a large angular piece that spans the distance and tenons into the underside of this subtop. So it sort of triangulates the support assembly. And it makes that subtop rigid, which can then support the top and keep both of them from sagging.
Okay. Okay. Let's see what. Oh, come on now.
So as usual, it's, you know, the more simple the aesthetic, the more complex the build.
Right.
So this is just kneeling down, kind of looking underneath the table. And if you look at the leg assembly, you'll see that there is a portion of it that is about 2 inches thick by about 3 or 4 inches deep that is square to the tabletop, parallel to the tabletop. And then there's this long angular piece that goes across the span of the table, right? Yep. And then there's a vertical piece behind that angular component that helps to support the top.
All right. Let's see if we can.
So this pocket shows how I cut it on the ShopBot, being that it's longer than the table. So what I did was just measured it out as accurately as I could. And if you look carefully at the pocket, at the end of the pocket that's closest to you, that is at the maximum offset that I could go past the end of the table with the tool. So it's, I think it's 3 1/4.
It's right before it hits the stop, the hard
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah. So then the end of the table is just sticking off in space. It doesn't matter, you know, what that is. And then it's doing the same thing. If you look, I have a 5x8 cutting surface. If you look at the back of that sheet of MDF that acts as a spoil board, there is another leg assembly on the end of the table, and then the tabletop extends out past that. So
Okay.
I have that, you know, the pocket is a little under 10 feet. I mean, a little over 10 feet, which I was able to sort of ooch and scooch carefully, just marking on the table, and the weight of the top kept it down. I didn't have to do anything other than just screw a couple of cleats down to the bed to keep it from shifting. And then I put a couple of pieces of carpet tape at either end, just enough to keep it, you know, keep it from shifting around. It was dead flat when I put it on the tabletop, so it was no problem. So in this pocket that I'm cutting, I put a series of tenons, just floating tenons, that supports that angular piece for the subtop. And that and the angular piece just terminates into that pocket.
I think that's in one of the pictures toward the end.
Yeah, and so this shot shows, I just climbed up on the table to show you how long the piece is. I mean, it's just huge. This shot shows the 2 laminated Brazilian cherry. They're like support beams that are pocketed into the underside of the actual tabletop.
So this one's in place.
That's right. And I was just showing, you know, while I was gluing them in there. So there, I mean, it was a really good vacuum fit. I mean, they just slid in perfectly.
You didn't have to clamp them. You didn't have to do anything.
No, I didn't have to do anything. I just knocked them into place. I literally jumped up on the tabletop and just stomped them down in the hole with my boot, and then just wandered around with a dead blow mallet, made sure it was flat, you know. But it was, they're perfect.
All right. Oh my God. Hey.
Then this is the leg assembly when I was cutting that out, and you can see where that angular piece is is cut into that supports the underside of the subtop.
So all this stuff is like 2 inches thick, somewhere around there, 8/4.
Yeah,
Okay.
all of it is 8/4. and it's what they call genuine mahogany, whatever that means these days. But it's, you know, it's hard, but it's not, you know, hard like oak or, you know, a lot of other species, Brazilian cherry or any of that stuff. So it wants to sag, you know, under that span. And then this little pocket here shows that angular piece underneath, which is tenoned into the side.
Okay.
So it's not just a butt joint. There's floating tenons in between those two pieces. Then there are floating tenons that go all the way through that subtop to the leg. And then there's a vertical piece that slides into this hole where you can see into the open portion of the table that gets pocket or is pocket hole attached to the subtop and to the legs. And then it's screwed into this. That's right.
This is not open in the final one. There's a piece that.
Right. There's a vertical piece right there.
Okay.
And so that's screwed in to the leg assembly on the left, and then to the subtop at the top, and then along this bottom edge is screwed in there as well. So it really makes it rigid.
Yeah.
Then these holes just show, you know, when I attach those two beams by placing the top onto the subtop, I needed to use heavy carriage bolts to make sure that it sits down flat and doesn't pull up or anything like that. I didn't want to trust it to, you know, cabinet screws or something. So what I did on the front, this is actually, the holes are on the back side of the table.
Okay.
And on the front, I attached it with a series of, I don't know, 12 or 15 cabinet assembly screws, you know, steel assembly screws.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the back side, I used 2.5-inch zinc plated lag bolts, like 5/16 lag bolts or something like that. And I cut the holes using the Festool Domino.
Okay.
I just laid it up there and just cut them. It was faster than drawing it on V-carb. So anyway, I just used the slotted hole to allow for a little expansion and contraction. And I just tightened the lag bolts up to where it's pulling it all the way down, but it's not so tight that it can't move back and forth.
That whole expansion and contraction mystifies a lot of people. They're just not convinced that it'll, especially the guys that work with plywood and sheet stuff. You know, plywood will move in thickness, but it's pretty stable, you know, length and width, because you know there's cross laminations.
Right.
You know, and people, you know, glue things together and screw them together. They figure that's what it is. And then they get caught in, they start working with solid lumber, and they don't understand why their tops all blow apart, and you know why they.
Right. Everything cracks and.
Oh yeah, and it's, you know, it's different in the winter and in the summer and all that. You know, there's a lot of you see it in, like, if you do slotted plywood stuff.
Yep.
You'll see it. You know, you make it in the winter when you got nice dry, cold, dry weather, and it's a perfect fit. And then in the summer when it's hot and moist, everything's all buckling, you can't get it apart. Or you make it in the summer when it's hot and humid, and then in the wintertime it falls apart because it's amazing how much this stuff moves.
We have a beautiful table at the house that at our house that has a quilted maple top, and it's a pretty big, you know, it's like a hall table. It has a beautiful quilted maple top with this ebony inlay in it, and then it has this mahogany base. So you have these disparate materials that want to move at different rates.
Yeah, yeah.
And all throughout the year, the table just talks to us. It just creaks and pops, and you know, and it's just part of the story, I guess. I don't know, but it looks great.
One of these days, I'll get fired up and I'll do my rant on cutting imprecise materials with precise tools.
Right.
I can get wound up about that. I get more wound up about that than politics or religion. I can get fired up about it. About getting sort of perceived um, measurement accuracy and the need for, you know, super precise measurements in stuff that's going to move. You know, the first time a sunbeam hits it, it's going to change size. But anyway, that's for another episode. But I've got a good rant going.
Well, I think you're right on with a lot of that. It befuddles my students when they come in here and I say, yeah, you know, it'll be okay. I labor over a gap that's a 32nd of an inch or you know, greater than that is just unacceptable to me. But if I've got a gap that's a 32nd of an inch, then I'm going to take it apart and I'm going to run it across the joiner again or cut it on the table saw or whatever, because it's got to close.
Yeah.
But then I'll turn around and sort of talk out of the other side of my mouth and say, but you know, a 16th here, a 16th, it's just not that big of a deal because the wood moves so much anyway. And they have the hardest time understanding how I can be, you know, ultra precise on one hand in terms of fit, but in terms of width, it's like, you know, it'd be one thing if I was making a piece of furniture and I said, you know, I just hack off an inch or so. That's a totally different statement than saying it's okay if it's, you know, you want the finished piece to be right. It doesn't really matter if it's a 16th of an inch narrower or shorter or whatever. It's going to expand at least that much over time anyway.
We're not making artificial heart valves, you know. It's
no, sir.
Good enough is good enough. What are you working on the rest of the day today?
Well, we're delivering the landing for the stair treads that I did last week, or what, week before last now. We are making face frames for the cabinets that we've done. I glued up a conference tabletop last night before I left. And so I'm going to unclamp that and start belt sanding the glue out of it or off of it. And that's going to be the day today. And I'm going to try to get this conference table done in the next couple of days.
Nice, nice.
I cut all the parts, made everything a while back, so it makes it a lot faster. You know, when I do heavy milling, I just set up and I go through all the planing and joining and table saw work at one time, and I sort of make piles of parts, and then I go back and start working the parts, you know, individually. So when I build, anytime I have a job like this, I don't want to have to go through this process of milling, you know, over and over again.
Sure.
I lay out all the material and I go, that's the worst part of the job. I don't know anybody that loves standing in front of a planer for 8 hours.
It's dirty and it's dusty and it's noisy, and you're constantly shoveling chips into bags or sweeping up. You know, it's just, you might as well just get on with it and be done.
Yeah. Just plow through it, and then everything else is kind of fun. I mean, and it's like you're just putting parts together, or you're doing the fun cuts, you know, the kind of angled cuts, or you're working on the ShopBot or whatever. That's the fun stuff. It's the turning it from 16-foot long 12-quarter boards into smaller boards that's awful. It's like the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, people sort of glamorize this kind of stuff, but it's just hard, dirty, dusty work a lot of times.
Right.
Just no matter how you look at it, you can make it seem like you're doing, you know, an old world craftsman, but it's just grunt work.
Oh, it's just heavy. It's just like lifting shingles up a ladder. I mean, it's just the most miserable thing in the world.
Yeah.
It only gets glamorous when the finish is on it and it's sitting under some lights somewhere, and people go, ooh, it looks great. I love this. Must be such romance to do this for a living. And it's like, yeah, sometimes. You sort of think about the 900 bags of sawdust you've thrown away this year, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I produce so much sawdust, I try to give it away to horse farms. I try to give it to folks to fill holes in their yard. I put it everywhere, and it still ends up in the dump.
It's still just too much. There's no good solution for that. I've looked at stuff, you know, compress it and make things out of, you know, make
I've tried it.
logs and all. And I almost bought a wood chipper once just to throw the scrap into, just to make smaller chunks. Then with all those weird offcuts and all that.
Well, for me, it's all hardwood, and we have a fireplace at home, so we have this kind of never-ending supply of really good quality hardwood to burn. And you know, we've got a smoker at home, so any of the fruit woods and stuff like that, I hang on to.
Just about everything I cut's plywood, and you don't want to burn that. All the glue's nasty. So
no, it's gross.
Yeah. Well, I got
Bill,
cut, and you got work to do.
Yes, sir.
So until the next time, have fun.
Have a wonderful day, my friend.
Thank you, bud. Take care.